When someone mentions the no contact rule, the first reaction many people have is that it sounds like a game, as if it's some kind of emotional chess move designed to manipulate the other person into chasing you. But that's not what this is about. No contact isn't about punishment. It's about clarity. It's about stepping back so you can actually see what's happening, because when you're deep in it, when emotions are raw and everything is tangled, clarity is the first thing to disappear. Think about the last time you had a breakup or a situationship that left you confused. You go from constant communication to this deafening silence, and suddenly your mind starts racing. Should I send a message? Should I ask for closure? What if they think I don't care? What if they move on? These questions come up not because you're weak or needy, they come up because your nervous system is addicted to the presence of someone who was once emotionally significant in your life, and when that presence is abruptly removed, your brain scrambles to re-establish contact. But what if, instead of following that impulse, you did the opposite? What if, instead of reaching out, you leaned into the silence? The no contact rule gives you that opportunity. Not to freeze them out, not to make them suffer, but to take the emotional oxygen away from a fire that's been burning unchecked. You can't think clearly when you're still trying to decode their texts, still wondering what their last Instagram post meant, still hoping for a sudden message at midnight. No contact is a boundary, and boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary. They say, I'm stepping out of this emotional fog because I need to see what's real. When you're constantly in contact with someone, especially someone you're emotionally invested in, your perspective gets skewed. Every hey feels like a breadcrumb of hope. Every like on your story becomes a signal you want to overanalyze. But here's the truth. People don't always give you the space to heal, you have to take it. And you do that by saying, right now, I'm not doing this dance, I'm not participating in the gray zone. You take your power back the moment you stop waiting for someone else to decide how you should feel. Here's what's fascinating. The moment you go quiet, things begin to reveal themselves. You start to see who was only there for attention and who was really invested. You begin to feel your own emotions rise to the surface without being clouded by their presence. And sometimes what rises isn't longing, it's exhaustion, resentment. The realization that what you were holding on to wasn't love, it was habit, familiarity, fear of being alone. No contact gives you that emotional X-ray. It shows you what's underneath the surface that you couldn't see when you were too close to it. And clarity, let's be honest, is rare when we're in love or infatuated. We get wrapped up in potential, in what we thought it could become, if only they changed, if only they tried, if only they saw us the way we saw them. But when you step back, when you give it time and distance, you stop seeing what you wanted them to be, and you start seeing who they actually were. That's the gift of no contact. It peels away the fantasy layer by layer until you're left with something real. It may not always be pretty, but at least it's honest. You might worry that your silence means you'll lose them, that they'll forget about you, that your absence will be the reason they move on. But if someone forgets you because you set a boundary, they were never really choosing you in the first place. Real connection doesn't disappear just because you went quiet. In fact, silence often echoes louder than words. It makes people notice, it makes them reflect, and sometimes, yes, it makes them come back. But that's not the goal. The goal is that when or if they do, you're no longer the same person waiting by the phone. You've changed. You've seen things more clearly. So no contact isn't a punishment. It's not a power play. It's not about making the other person feel bad. It's about reclaiming your mental space, your emotional rhythm, and your sense of self. It's not about making them miss you. It's about making sure you don't miss the lesson this experience came to teach you. You cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. That's not just a poetic line. It's a hard truth we all learn, often the hard way. When a relationship, a situationship, or even just a connection starts to feel toxic or confusing, we instinctively try to fix it from the inside. We keep showing up. We keep texting, we keep having the same circular conversations. We convince ourselves that if we just say the right thing, do the right thing, or become a better version of ourselves, maybe they'll understand, maybe it'll all click. But healing doesn't happen when you're still standing in the emotional battlefield. It happens when you step out of it long enough to stop bleeding. Think about what happens when you get physically injured. If you break a bone, the doctor doesn't tell you to keep walking on it every day and hope it'll fix itself. They tell you to rest, they stabilize it, they give it time and space. Emotional wounds need the same kind of care, but we don't treat them that way. We keep going back to the same conversations, the same cycles, the same people, thinking that this time maybe the pain will be different. It won't. Not until you remove yourself from what's causing the injury in the first place. The reason so many people stay stuck after a breakup or an emotional fallout is because they never leave the environment that broke them. They stay in the same chat threads. They keep rewatching old stories. They keep tabs on what the other person is doing, who they're seeing, what they're posting. And every time they do, it's like ripping the scab off a healing wound. You never get a chance to recover because you're still immersed in it. You're still emotionally available to someone who's already shown you they're not willing to meet you where you need to be met. Healing requires disconnection, not because you're bitter, not because you hate them, but because you love yourself enough to stop pouring energy into a space that's only been draining you. When you're constantly exposed to the person or the pattern that hurt you, you stay reactive. Your nervous system doesn't settle. Your mind doesn't get quiet. You're always one message away from being triggered again. That's not peace. That's survival mode dressed up as hope. Some people think staying in contact is a sign of emotional maturity, that it shows you're evolved, that you can be just friends. But there's a difference between being mature and being self-sacrificing. There's nothing noble about pretending you're okay while breaking inside. You don't get extra points for holding on to a connection that's costing you your mental health. Maturity is knowing when to walk away, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace, to keep sacrificing it for someone who doesn't even notice. And sometimes the environment that broke you isn't just the person, it's the version of yourself that kept accepting crumbs. It's the internal dialogue that told you, maybe this is the best I can get. It's the pattern of people pleasing, the fear of abandonment, the unwillingness to sit with your own loneliness. So even when you remove the person, you still have work to do. You have to rebuild a new environment within yourself, one that's nurturing, one that holds boundaries, one that's no longer desperate for outside validation. That takes time, and that time can't be rushed just because you miss the comfort of what was familiar. It's hard, no doubt. Walking away from something that still has emotional weight is one of the toughest things you'll ever do, but it's also one of the most powerful. Because in that space, after the noise dies down, you finally start to hear your own voice again. You start to remember who you were before they came into your life. You start to rebuild your identity, not around what you were to them, but who you are to yourself. You'll have moments where you're tempted to go back, to reach out, to re-engage. And that's normal. Healing isn't linear. But remind yourself every time you go back into the environment that broke you, you delay your healing. You stretch out the pain, you postpone the peace you say you're looking for. Real healing demands space, not just physical, but emotional, digital, mental. It demands that you remove the stimuli that keep triggering the same response. Otherwise, you're just recycling pain and calling it love. The person who hurt you might not have been a bad person. The relationship may have had good moments, but none of that changes the fact that your healing can't happen while you're still trying to be okay inside the very place you got wounded. You don't need to hate them. You don't need to make a dramatic exit, but you do need to leave, quietly, consistently, and with grace. Because nothing changes if nothing changes. And if you want peace, it starts by walking away from the noise. When you choose to step away, to create that silence and distance, something powerful happens. People start to reflect, not just on what they lost, but on what they never truly understood. Absence doesn't just make the heart grow fonder, it makes it reconsider, reevaluate, and reassess. You see, the thing about being physically present all the time is that it's easy to take someone for granted. The constant flow of attention, of energy, of interactions creates a kind of comfort, a sort of routine. You're there, they're there, and everything feels predictable, like a familiar song playing in the background. But the moment that song stops, when the presence that once filled the room is suddenly absent, the music isn't just missed, it's noticed. The absence creates space for reflection, and in that space, everything starts to come into focus. The mind works in mysterious ways. When something is always available, we rarely stop to appreciate it. We assume it'll always be there, and in doing so we can become complacent, passive. But once that person steps back, once you stop responding to every message, every call, every invitation, that complacency is broken. The absence forces them to notice the void. The energy you once contributed to their life isn't just gone, it's felt. It's felt in a way that they can't ignore, because it's no longer drowned out by the noise of constant interaction. When they're alone with their thoughts, they start to process, they start to question, and suddenly, the way they see you is entirely different. Absence doesn't just make them long for you, it makes them evaluate what your presence actually brought to their life. It's easy to forget the impact of someone when you see them every day. The small moments, the inside jokes, the shared glances, the quiet comfort of simply being together. Those are the things that accumulate over time. But in the whirlwind of day-to-day interaction, it's easy to overlook those subtle yet significant parts of a relationship. When you step away, however, they no longer have those little moments to rely on. They don't get the daily dose of reassurance, the casual companionship. And so they're forced to confront a question they may have been avoiding. What did you really bring into their life? This is where the magic happens. The absence triggers reflection on a much deeper level than mere longing. It's not just about missing someone's smile or the warmth of their touch. It's about realizing how much they truly mattered, how much they contributed to the person they were becoming. It's about the small, seemingly insignificant things that made the relationship unique. And it's also about acknowledging the things they took for granted. When everything is right in front of you, it's hard to appreciate the true value of what you have. But when it's gone, you have to reckon with its absence, and that reckoning leads to introspection. In those quiet moments without you, they'll start to ask themselves questions that never occurred to them before. Did they really give you what you needed? Were they as present for you as you were for them? Were they taking you for granted? It's in the absence that they have no choice but to confront their actions, or lack thereof. Without you around, they can't hide behind their excuses or distractions. They can't distract themselves with the next message, the next phone call, the next plans. They are left to think, to sit with the realization that they might have missed something important. They might realize they took your kindness, your patience, your love, for granted. And sometimes, that's when they start to see things clearly. It's also important to remember that reflection doesn't always mean regret, but it does mean reconsideration. Absence doesn't always lead someone to regret losing you. Sometimes, it simply leads them to realize what they had, what they let slip by. Sometimes, they might even realize that you weren't the right person for them at all. Absence doesn't guarantee a comeback. It simply guarantees a moment of clarity, and that clarity might not always align with your hopes, but it does guarantee that something shifts, something deep within them will change. They'll start to see you in a new light, not because you've done anything different, but because the absence made them realize that the value of someone can't always be seen until they're no longer there. This is why the no contact rule is so powerful. It's not about playing games or trying to manipulate emotions. It's about giving both parties the time and space to step back and reflect. It's about allowing them to experience the absence of you, and in that absence discover things they wouldn't have seen if you had stayed in the picture. Absence doesn't just create longing, it creates awareness. It shakes up the status quo, and in that shake-up, there is an opportunity for growth, for change and for realization. Sometimes, it's only when we remove ourselves from the equation that others can truly understand what we brought to the table. And that's when the magic of absence takes its fullest form, when it transforms into reflection, into understanding, and perhaps into a deeper connection. There's something deeply powerful about silence that words often fail to capture. In a world where we're constantly encouraged to communicate, to share, to express our feelings through texts, messages, and posts, it can feel almost counterintuitive to step back and say nothing. But the truth is, silence can speak louder than 1,000 words ever could. It can convey more emotion, more intent, more power than any carefully crafted message ever will. Because in that silence, you're not just withholding words, you're making a statement that nothing else can match. When you choose not to reach out, when you decide to not respond to the endless back and forth, it's not a passive act, it's a deliberate choice, and it carries a weight that no casual "I miss you" or "let's talk soon" can ever communicate. There's a certain kind of strength in silence. It's the strength of not needing to chase, not needing to fill the empty space with empty words. It's the strength of knowing that you have enough self-worth to not always seek validation, to not always be the one doing the emotional labor. In a world that values constant communication, choosing silence is like saying, "I know my value, and I don't need to convince you of it." It's a reminder that your worth isn't dependent on their acknowledgement or approval. But silence isn't just about withholding words, it's about what it triggers in the other person. It forces them to sit with their own thoughts, their own emotions, and face the reality of the situation. When you stop responding, stop initiating contact, the noise of the relationship, all those little messages, those quick check-ins, those constant updates, quiets down, and in that silence they're left to reflect. They can no longer rely on your words to fill in the blanks, to smooth over the awkwardness, to make them feel secure. Your silence forces them to question, what does it mean that you're no longer engaging? What does it mean that you've stopped reaching out? It leaves them with only their own thoughts to grapple with. And in that silence, something profound happens. They start to realize the value of what they had. It's easy to forget the significance of something when it's always there, right in front of you. When you're constantly texting, constantly calling, constantly reassuring them, it's hard for them to see how much effort, care, and love you were putting into the relationship. They might think it's just part of the dynamic, part of the routine. But when you pull back, when you stop offering that same level of attention, they begin to notice. They feel the absence. They feel the void where your words and energy used to be. And that void forces them to reflect on what they took for granted. Silence also sends a powerful message about your own boundaries. By not engaging in constant back and forth, you're asserting that you're not willing to be a source of emotional exhaustion. You're not available on demand. And that message, though unspoken, carries more weight than any lengthy explanation could. When you're constantly chasing someone with your words, constantly trying to explain yourself, to win their approval, you're diminishing your own sense of self-respect. You're telling them that you're willing to tolerate being emotionally drained just for a little bit of their attention. But when you stop, when you go quiet, you're telling them that your time, your energy, and your feelings are valuable. You're not going to waste them on something that doesn't respect your worth. There's also something deeply human about the way silence plays with our minds. When someone goes silent on us, it stirs something deep inside. We start to question our own actions, our own behavior. What did we do wrong? Why are they no longer reaching out? This is why silence can often trigger reflection, not just longing. People don't just miss your presence when you go quiet. They start to ask themselves questions. They start to wonder if they took you for granted, if they neglected you, if they could have done things differently. And in that space of questioning, they start to see you in a new light. The absence of your words makes them see the value of what you offered in a way that constant communication never could. But silence doesn't just create space for reflection for the other person, it also gives you the chance to regain perspective. When you stop engaging in the back and forth, you start to see the relationship more clearly. You stop being swept up in the emotional highs and lows of constant communication. You start to recognize whether the connection was truly fulfilling, or whether you were just caught in a cycle of emotional dependency. And in that clarity, you can make decisions that are in alignment with your true needs, not just with the fear of being alone or disconnected. Your silence may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to constant communication, but over time, it becomes a form of emotional self-preservation. It's a way to protect your peace, to set boundaries, and to remind yourself that your worth doesn't depend on someone else's response. It teaches you to value your own company, your own thoughts, your own emotional state, and that's a lesson that no amount of text messages or phone calls can teach you. In the end, silence isn't about cutting someone off or playing games. It's about stepping into your own power and allowing the space to reflect, to heal, and to reevaluate. It's about sending a message, not just to the other person, but to yourself, that you are worthy of respect, of boundaries, and of a love that doesn't require constant effort to prove its worth. Silence, in its truest form, is the loudest thing you can say, and sometimes it speaks volumes. No contact isn't a tactic, it's a transformation. It's not a manipulation game, nor a way to make someone feel jealous or guilty. It's not some trick to get them to come crawling back. It's much deeper than that. The true power of no contact lies not in the effect it has on the other person, but in the effect it has on you. No contact is a way to step away from the emotional fog and create space for yourself to evolve, to heal, and to reconnect with the person you were before the relationship, before the drama, before all the noise. It's a way of rediscovering your own worth, without needing the validation of someone else to feel complete. We live in a world where we are constantly taught to chase what we want, to pursue love and connection, to make things work at all costs. We are conditioned to believe that if something is important, we should never give up on it. But here's the truth. Sometimes, walking away is the most important thing you can do for yourself. The moment you choose no contact, you're not just saying no to that person, you're saying no to the patterns, the emotional roller coasters, and the habits that no longer serve you. You're choosing to step out of the chaos and into clarity. At its core, no contact is about rediscovering your sense of self. It's about remembering who you are when you're not wrapped up in someone else's world, when you're not consumed by their needs, their expectations, or their emotional highs and lows. For so many of us, especially in emotionally charged relationships, it's easy to lose ourselves. We start defining our happiness, our worth, and our value based on how someone else is treating us, how much attention they're giving us, how much affection they're showing. We become emotionally dependent, thinking that without them, we won't be okay. But no contact offers you a chance to break free from that dependency. It's a chance to realize that your happiness is not contingent upon anyone else. It's about finding peace and contentment within yourself, without needing someone else to affirm you. In the absence of constant communication, the need to check your phone or to reach out diminishes. You realize that you can go an entire day without wondering if they're thinking about you, or if they're out with someone else, or if you'll get the text you've been waiting for. And with that realization comes a deeper freedom, a freedom that allows you to rediscover what you need, what you desire, and what you truly deserve. In that space, your emotional energy is no longer being drained. You're no longer reacting to their every move or word. Instead, you're in a position where you can respond, not from a place of desperation or fear, but from a place of strength and clarity. No contact is also a way to reclaim your power. When you are constantly available, constantly reaching out, constantly hoping for a sign, you're giving your emotional energy away without receiving anything in return. It's like pouring water into a glass with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you give, it's never enough, and it never fills you up. No contact is the act of taking your energy back. It's about saying, I deserve more than breadcrumbs. I deserve to be fully seen, fully heard, and fully respected. And if you can't offer that, then I'm going to step away and let the situation breathe until I know what's next. It's not about controlling the other person, it's about controlling yourself, your emotions, your decisions, and your boundaries. But no contact isn't just about setting boundaries with someone else, it's about setting boundaries with yourself. How often do you catch yourself scrolling through old messages, rereading conversations, analyzing every little detail, trying to piece together what went wrong, or what could have been? We've all done it, gotten caught up in the past, trapped in a loop of overthinking. But no contact forces you to break that habit. It's a commitment to stop obsessing over what could have been, and start focusing on what is your own growth, your own healing. It's the ultimate act of self-respect. It's important to understand that no contact isn't just about taking a break from someone else. It's about taking a break from the negative emotions and the cycle of attachment that might be keeping you stuck. You are no longer putting your life on hold, waiting for someone to come around or for something to change. Instead, you are choosing to take the reins of your life and to drive it in the direction that feels best for you. You begin to realize that you don't need their approval to move forward. You don't need their validation to feel whole. You can thrive without them, and in fact, you'll likely thrive more by staying away from the toxicity that the relationship may have brought. And let's not forget the profound growth that comes from this experience. No contact isn't easy, it's challenging. It can feel uncomfortable, like you're doing something wrong. You may find yourself longing to reach out, to break the silence. But every time you resist that urge, every time you choose to stay strong, you build a muscle of emotional resilience. You teach yourself that you can live without them, that you can be content, at peace, and even happy, without needing their presence to define your sense of self. And that, my friend, is a transformation. It's not about getting someone back, it's about getting yourself back. In the end, no contact isn't a move you make to win or lose. It's a move you make to reclaim your peace and your self-worth. It's not a tactic, it's a transformation of who you are and how you see yourself. It's a process of stepping into a new chapter, one where you are the main character, and you are writing your own story. In conclusion, the power of no contact lies not in its effect on the other person, but in its transformative impact on you. It's not a game or a tactic, but a deliberate act of reclaiming your energy, your peace, and your sense of self. By stepping away from the emotional chaos, you create the space needed for reflection, healing, and personal growth. No contact is the opportunity to rediscover who you are when you're no longer defined by someone else's presence or approval. It allows you to break free from dependency and reconnect with your own worth. It teaches you that your happiness isn't contingent upon another person's actions or attention. It's an internal process that starts with self-love and boundaries. In the silence, the absence, you find clarity, you find strength, and you find the courage to prioritize your own well-being over the need to chase validation or hold on to something that no longer serves you. No contact is not about control or manipulation, it's about reclaiming your life, your emotional power, and your future. It's a step toward becoming the best version of yourself, free from the weight of toxic dynamics.